Thank you.
Here we go.
The first number, Black Granite, was commissioned to represent and memorialize the big black granite wall in Washington from the Vietnam Memorial. And it's a really great march. It's a great concert march, and it's actually been rewritten several times for younger bands, so everybody gets a chance to play it. It's really kind of one of the favorites of mine. It's been around for a long time. As you probably notice, I put the chairman to work because, unfortunately, because of my stroke, I still don't have a left hand back or a left arm, and so I have a page turner, which I'm getting kind of used to. I may just kind of fake this arm for a long time. I'm not sure. because it's really handy. I can move it. It moves now, which it hasn't for 17 months, but it's not. I'm not able to do conducting with it. But these guys, it doesn't seem to stop these guys, and I'm really happy. I must admit that it's kind of a major thing. This is the first time in 17 months I've been able to do a multi-day honor band, so I kind of feel like I have a big boy challenge this weekend. So I hopefully I passed very well. We're going to continue with a piece called "With Quiet Courage." Quiet Courage was written by Larry Dane, actually to honor his mother. But it came out about a year before 9/11. And during the year of 9/11, where I was going out and doing many, many honor bands across the nation, I just took this piece out, and I always kind of dedicated it to all the 3,000 victims of that particular event. And I haven't done it for a long time, and suddenly this year I suddenly realized, oh, this is kind of a neat piece, and so it was written for one event for Larry for his mom, but somehow over the years it's taken on kind of one of those tribute pieces that kind of reflects all of us, so having the quiet courage we need to face obstacles, whichever they may be. And so the band has done a wonderful job on this. I think you'll enjoy this piece. But with quiet courage, Larry Dane. Thank you. Camille Saint-Saëns was born in 1831. He died in 1909. This particular march, the Pauvre Doublet, is called a quick step march. It's kind of written in a matter of a quick step march, but it's mostly what we would call light classical in nature. It's been around for obviously a long time, probably about, I think it was originally written probably, I'm going to guess about 1870, 1880, somewhere near the mid part of his life. It was transcribed for band in 1971, and actually since 1971, it's played a great deal. It's really become a real standard in the literature, and basically to have a piece that's actually written for orchestra to get translated into band and to do so well, it's really neat. And it's been a favorite of mine for a good number of years. In fact, I heard it quite by accident one day because I was actually doing an honor band, and the other conductor did the piece, and I went, what a nifty piece. It's one of those things that's just happy music, and it really rolls along. It's not easy. There's a lot of runs. I'm going to hand it to these kids. Yesterday afternoon, after we've gone through a Thursday night rehearsal for 3 hours, we've gone through a whole day from 8:30 in the morning to 12, and from 1:30 on until about 6 o'clock. And the last hour and a half of rehearsals like that, let me tell you, it ain't easy. And so we had to sit here, but we sat here and did a lot of digging in that last hour, and these young people did not stop, did not give up. I mean, it just didn't faze them at all. They just really went into it. I'm going to tell you, it's just been one of the finest bands I think that we've had here as a honor band. They've read well, and they've worked really well. A great work ethic on stage. And yesterday they really proved it, because I'm going to tell you, they aren't the only ones that's tired after the last hour and a half of a Saturday afternoon rehearsal. And they come in this morning. We've gone through the program twice this morning, worked on little things, trying to do some things to clean up a few moments. And there's never been at least they're not complaining to me. And I know they're not complaining to Mrs. Holsinger, because I'm the good cop and she's the bad cop. So it's like, but they've done yeoman's work. So I think you'll enjoy this piece. But Pauvre Doublet, Camille Saint-Saëns. Well, we have a slight tradition here with the Lee Wind Ensemble and it kind of moves right over here with the Lee Honor Band. We always play a march by John Philip Sousa because, well, in the band he's kind of our patron saint, I guess. I'm not really sure, but I think it should be a law that we have to play Sousa on every concert in America. I mean, it's just something I think about. I will write the president. Well, maybe I won't write the president. But anyway, it's just, Sousa wrote 124 pieces that are designated as marches. And he wrote an awful lot of other stuff, operas, operettas, light classical works, suites, a bunch of stuff. But it's not as good as the marches. That's why we don't hear it. And to be perfectly honest, there's a lot of Sousa music out there that we don't really hear, and basically because when it was written by this time in 2016, it's somewhat dated. The marches, however, never seem to go out of style. I mean, I had a conductor once when I was a young lad in college who told me, if you can play a Sousa march musically, you can play anything musically. And he's right, because there's a lot of stuff in a Sousa march that makes us play different. It's just not really they're not, all of them are not an in-your-face type of march. In fact, most of the Sousa marches are based on a dance step, the two-step, which was something that you would have seen on Downton Abbey, when they had a dance thing where the ladies are all in their bustles and long dresses and stuff like that. It's just, an old-fashioned dance that basically is a strong one, a weak two. So it's, instead of just boom, 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 there's really boom, tick, boom, tick. This is the kind of feel. So all the marches, even the ones that are regimental marches or the ones that are horse parade marches, are basically kind of all based on that particular kind of strong, weak feel, which really kind of gives them all a different feel than like a march by, people like Henry Fillmore or Carl King, which are basically circus marches and go just lickety-split. A Sousa march will be anywhere from what we call 120 to maybe 132. They're not really fast marches. They're dances. And as long as when we get that in our mind, it kind of changes the whole feel. Because even things like it's hard to believe it's Stars and Stripes Forever is a dance thing, but it's kind of based on that dance feel. We don't play it like a dance feel, but it's just, for the most part, it's something that's kind of in the Sousa tradition that we have learned over the years that kind of puts him kind of far above in a way some of the other march people of the time. The guy was a rock star. I mean, he took his band around the world 4 times between 1900 and 1914, and around the world in those days was on a ship. I mean, doing concerts in Tahiti. I mean, but go around the world in those years with the Sousa band, which is a phenomenal feat. So he was probably the most well-known. They say in the books they write about it that he was probably the most well-known musician in the world in the early part of the century. He died in 1935. Had a heart attack right after a concert. I mean. Like any good band guy, we just all hope we die on the podium. It's just great. That's the only way to go. But this is the Pathfinder of Panama. It was written, of course, Teddy Roosevelt. It was written for Teddy Roosevelt to honor his exploits building the Panama Canal. So this is called the Pathfinder of Panama. John Philip Sousa. There's a lot of percussion changes for this next piece, so I told the guys I would talk real slow. However, the story behind the piece, it's called Deborah's Triumph, Jael's Revenge. And I've written a number of pieces that have been inspired by Old Testament stories. And I was getting about the heroes of the Old Testament and Abram's pursuit and among others, and the gathering of the ranks. I mean, they're just all about Bible stories, especially the Old Testament, because it was kind of like the Old Testament would have made a good video game. You know, that's what it amounts to. A lot of war and bloodshed, you know. So it's, Well, I was getting a little guff because I wasn't kind of recognizing a few of the female heroes of the Old Testament. And so doing a bit of research, of course it didn't take long, I found Deborah, of course, Deborah was a prophetess and a ruler of the Israelites at a certain time in the biblical era. And so her armies were being besieged by a giant named Sisera. And Sisera was a bad guy. Okay. And of course, what happened was Sisera's army had iron chariots. It's the first time in the Bible that iron chariots are actually mentioned. And so Deborah's forces, which basically were archers and spearmen, I mean, they wouldn't stand a chance against an army of iron chariots running across the desert or prairie land towards them, kind of thing. So she got the wise idea of putting her army on one side of a marsh, of a swamp, which made Sisera's army have to charge across the swamp. And of course, since they all had iron chariots, they all got mired down, and therefore all of Deborah's archers and her spearmen, well, laid waste to them. Okay, that's basically what happened. I mean, she was a smart gal, you know. She took advantage of the situation. Well, Sisera was wounded. He escaped and ran to a Bedouin village nearby, and there he met a woman, a wife of a Israelite named Jael. And so, being the people they are, she took pity on this guy who happened to be very wounded. She fed him. She took care of his wounds. She fed him, and in return, he assaulted her. And so, I mean, it was, you know, and so here she is. Well, he goes to sleep, and Jael, in true Israelite fashion, I suppose today, she drives a tent peg through his head. Well, that did it, you know. So when Deborah and her army showed up, Jael was deemed a great heroine of Israel, and went down in the history books as one of those, for one of the finest women warriors of all time of the Israelites. So I saw this story and went, okay, I can do that. That sounds good. So near the end, you will hear how can I say this nicely? The killing blow, I suppose. That's the only way I can say it, you know, towards the end. But I tried to just kind of imagine this whole scenario of just the lonely plain, the armies advancing, and then suddenly the charge and everything, and then just the final ending. But the kids have done a great job on the piece. It's only been played 3 times. This is the 3rd time it's been played. It isn't even published yet. It's published in December. We played it here last year, maybe it was last year, and then it's been recorded for a CD. But then this is I guess is there such thing as a 3rd premiere? Well, at least there is now, because it doesn't really exist yet until December. So this is called Deborah's Triumph, Jael's Revenge.